Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello, everyone. This is Angela, and thank you so much for joining us for another Connections Live webinar. Today is June 22nd, and we're happy that you are here joining us because the topic tonight is We Don't Choose Our Family. If you're not really sure what we mean by that, just hold on because Dr. Ray and Jean will be here in just a moment to discuss family and relationships within it. And you are welcome to ask your questions and participate by using the comment section. We'll be happy to have this discussion with you, not just in front of you. So please use the comments, say hello, ask your questions, and we will hopefully get them all answered on air tonight. Without further ado, here they are, Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hi, Ange. How you doing, Angie?
Great. How are you?
Good. Good to see you, daughter-in-law.
Good to see you.
We didn't get to pick that part of the family either.
No, we didn't. We didn't get to choose part of our choice.
Oh, is that what we're talking about? In-laws today?
We are talking about
Family.
all family.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know the reason why we came up with this topic, and you know, some of you out there know that Jean's brother passed. What is it now? 2 weeks ago, actually. 2 weeks ago, he passed, and you know, there has been just a lot of family that we've been around in the last couple of weeks. And I remember talking to your oldest brother, and he made the statement that you don't get to choose your family, you know, and we were kind of all gathered around, the whole family, and kind of this celebration of life and bonding together. And it was just a really, you know, just really put a lot of things into perspective. And so, you know, we talk a lot about couples relationships and relationships in general, but today we really wanted to focus on family relationships, because a lot of times when you choose your partner, their family comes along with it. Right? Hey, Carrie.
You know, it's kind of interesting to talk about the different relationships that we have in families, especially siblings. So, you know, most people kind of process the stuff they have with their parents or the stuff they have with their kids and work through those kind of things. And those are very specific. You know, for me, it's really interesting. I think our parents bond with us and constantly are thinking, hopefully, about us and taking care of us and what we need. But as kids, we don't give that back to our parents, and we're not supposed to.
Mm-mm.
As kids, you know, the first thing that happens is the cord gets cut. And then we walk up, start walking, and then from there on, we walk away.
We're running.
Sometimes
running away. Well, I mean, that's the goal.
Coming back.
That's the goal of every generation, is to evolve, right? And to learn from the past generation, to learn from their mistakes, to evolve, become better than. And that's what you want as a parent. You want your kids to become, you know, better than you, and to succeed in this world and become contributing members of society, right? And to be happy and healthy and have happy, healthy relationships, and, you know, generation after generation. And so that's what you want for our kids. But we never think about where we came from. You know, I think a lot of times we have negative thoughts about where we came from. Would you say?
Our womb mates, our nest mates. Yeah.
You just came up with that right now, because I've never heard you say that.
What'd your sister call it? Life witness?
Life witness. Yeah. And that is true. You know, our family members, our siblings, regardless of what relationships we have with them, they are our life witnesses.
Mhm.
You know, they grew up with us. We have experienced things with them that we have not experienced with our spouses.
And a lot of times parents don't even know what's happening between siblings. You know, siblings keep your secrets, and they are, you know, if our parents are the template of relationships, our siblings are our practice. You know, so they teach
like that.
us conflict. They teach us hopefully conflict resolution.
Hopefully.
They knock us down and they help us up. And it is that complicated with siblings. You know, there's both of that kind of stuff. And, you know, you see this even in, you know, like the animal kingdom, where, you know, the lion cubs they're fighting with each other as practice of how to become, you know, hunters in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what we are. You know, as children, we are constantly with our siblings. And then there comes a day where we move away and we're never really constantly with them ever again. And when we do get back together, at least in my family, it's typically because there's been a big life event where someone passed away or someone got married, or maybe my mom has a big birthday or something like that. And so they see you in these like snapshot things. And if you notice, whenever you go home, especially if your parents still live in your childhood home, you will act like you did the day you left. And you will relate to your siblings like you did back then.
Yeah, there's this kind of like, what do they call it? Just like reverting back. Regression. There we go. I should know this word. Regression back, you know, to where you were at and the relationship that you had with them in the past. And sometimes it's kind of interesting to see Jean around her siblings and to watch the regression. And I'm sure it's equally funny to watch me like regress, you know, around my family.
Yeah, I was going to just make a correction because you said regression back. And in case you wanted to know, I was going to say, you mean regress back.
Regress.
Right?
Back.
Or regress, just regress. I don't think the back is needed. You regress because that's in the definition.
Is that like 2 steps back, like it's double?
Yeah,
regress and back.
I think I squared it.
That's repetitive.
I think I squared it. Yeah.
Thanks, Ange.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the questions that came up while you're talking about regression is concerning I think you started to answer it about even as adults, we can regress when we're around our siblings, right? Mm-hmm. So what would be the positives of regressing and maybe the negatives?
I would say the positive is if you're able to become aware of it. I think the positive is that you can see how far you've come, right? And some of the differences of just your life experiences without your family, right? And what you've learned about yourself. And then also it gives you a different perspective on your family members as they've been moving through life too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, Ange, that you put together some recordings for our birthdays last year. And to hear the perspective, especially of Ray's sisters, and how they saw him, and they still described him like he was in high school.
Yeah, like I was a teenager.
But that's how they knew you. And we don't really get to know our siblings as adults so much. I mean, we see them, but there's not as much of that as we grow through life that they really can witness. And then sometimes we get that perspective from afar. You know, I think one of the things is when we see our siblings again, we have all these opportunities to play the long game. And the long game is that, you know, there are some siblings that hurt each other, that stop talking and may not talk for years or even the rest of their lives. And sometimes that's appropriate. And then there's other times where there's a chance to make amends, or there's a chance to become a more mature version of yourself for that relationship. And if you think about when we're born, we form bonds, cords to each other, right? And those cords don't go away. And they've even had some studies done on people who were adopted. And when their biological parent passed away, even though if they never met them, never knew anything about them, they would go through a little depression at that time, because that cord gets severed, because that's part of becoming human and becoming in this world. And when you have siblings, you also have a bond. It's different than the parent, but you also have that bond, whether you like them, whether you dislike them, whether you're close, whether you're distant. That is a fact that never changes. That's your sibling. Those are your parents. It's blood, it's biology. There is people getting those DNA tests done. Guess who shows up? It's not your best friend. It's your uncle or your cousin or your siblings that you're going to find doing that. And that's what we're talking about. It's in ourselves. I think that was one of the most amazing things, seeing my family again, is how much we look like each other. And my siblings all look very similar, but then each of the nieces and nephews have a similar look to somebody. There's always someone in the family that looks like someone else, same mannerisms, same coloring. And it's like, that doesn't go away, even if you move away. And years can go by, years and years and years, when you come back together, and it's.
Yeah. And, I think we have to do a little caveat here, and we're not talking about relationships with your siblings or family that have been abusive in any way, right? Those kinds of relationships are, very toxic and may have caused a lot of wounds in people. I mean, we're talking about kind of normal family dysfunction. And, in watching you with your family in the last couple of weeks, and them gathering together. And there's, every family is not void of any drama. That's for sure. And, Jean's family has had some drama over the years. Just a little bit, but to see everyone come together and to see everyone, kind of connect with each other and support each other, it just really puts things into perspective as far as, who's really going to be around, when you pass, and who's really going to be supporting you, Yeah,
I would say that is probably one of the most important things, is that you have this familiarity.
Yeah. Familiarity. Yeah.
And that it just can't go away. And it always, the stories that are way older than you are as an adult. Some of the stories I heard about some of the stuff we did. If anyone knew us back then, I just want to say I'm sorry, because we did some bad things. We were pretty wild kids. And it is a way to sort of reflect and make amends. And you show up as witnesses, because it's the right thing to do, because it is I'm just going to speak, about my siblings right now for a second, as we help my brother cross over. We were one of 9. I'm going to be 55, one of nine. It's like an identity that you have. And now we're one of 8.
Oops.
We're one of 8, and we all felt it. And we all lost our dad 20 years ago. And it wasn't the same. Our mom's still alive. We didn't become orphans, but you could feel the difference of the loss of a sibling. And we, most of us hadn't even seen him in a few years.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's like this frozen thing in time. And I remember hearing once, this might be a little bit crazy, so just hang in there with me, that possibly before we come here, we make a contract with our siblings. And whether that's true or not is a really fascinating thought, to think that you maybe at some level chose to show up on earth at this space and time with these other people. And these other people had something to teach you. These other people had something to share with you. And whether it was fun, whether it was painful, whatever it was, that there's a deep, great meaning in that. And I really want you to kind of think about that, no matter what your relationships are like with your siblings, is that, what if we chose?
So we have a question. And it is concerning growing up and what childhood can do when it comes to impacting siblings. So, Jean, being one of 9, I'm assuming that although you had similar environments and similar people raising you, you're all different. So let me put this question up on the screen.
Carrie, yeah. Can you explain why 2 kids can grow up in exactly the same situations but be so entirely different in moral, lifestyle, relationship choices, etc. as adults?
Yes.
Wow. Yes. And for Jean being one of 9, I think she has like the statistical overview here.
Yeah, statistically in life, there's like 1 in 9, like 1 in 9 people get diabetes, 1 in 9 people have mental illness, 1 in 9 people join the military, 1 in 9 people get cancer, 1 in 9 people become famous or whatever it is. And like in my family, almost all of us have something that we've done that's been unique. But what really happens, and it's kind of interesting, if you are a parent and you have 2 children, you know that they come in with stuff. And we have this thing called perception, and perception is our worldview. And think about it this way. Nobody can see the same rainbow, because if I'm here and you're here, your angle is different,
Totally
and we're
different,
seeing
right.
a different perspective of this event that's happening. And with working with couples and families for 20 years, you would swear people grew up in different houses and live in different houses. And it's the same concept. If there's a car accident and 5 people witness it, there's 5 different stories about what they witnessed, because we are all superimposing our own stuff. Even if we have identical experiences and aren't influenced maybe by friends or whoever else, we have a different perspective, even if it's just 1 foot away.
Yeah, when you look at it from the psychological perspective, research, all of that, they've done a lot of twin studies, and we talk about nature versus nurture, and from that perspective, the scientific perspective is that it's this combination of both nature and nurture. Even though twins are brought up in the same household and maybe exposed to the same kind of environment, they develop their own personality, they develop their own perspective on life. And so, that's the nurture piece. That's what we bring into this world as being unique beings. Even though we may be exposed to the same environment and stimulation, we are going to process it differently. And then we are going to, we're going to change and evolve differently because of those different environments.
The other thing that we do that's really interesting is if the firstborn child is one way, the secondborn will be a different way.
Yeah.
Just because of our need for attention. Yeah. So if the oldest is very loud.
And this is just a generalization here. It doesn't always follow this pattern, right? Some people say, oh, middle child syndrome.
But they will do something different to get that attention. So if the first one acts out a lot, the second one might be really good and follow the rules. And the third one might be really quiet. Or, we all have different ways of how do we fit into this family? And so that's another thing that impacts. And we can learn what our parents taught us. And we can learn the opposite of what our parents taught us. And then we superimpose our own thing. And that's where all this variety comes from about who we are, how we respond, our moral compasses, all that kind of stuff.
And then we meet a potential spouse and we get to know their family. And then that influences you as well, because now you start to learn about that different family culture and you start to evolve because of what you are experiencing individually.
I think the other thing that's really beneficial about siblings are they have a perspective that is at a very similar level to you. So parents are adults while you're children. And if you're going through something that maybe parents don't understand or other adults don't understand, a sibling might be able to help you navigate that, or you could have more difficult conversations and learn about things. I certainly learned a lot of things, probably not in a good way from my siblings that maybe I wouldn't have learned anywhere else. And probably with friends. But I think with friends, it's very different, because if you walk away from a friend, you don't feel that for very long.
And you can
You know.
you can extinguish that person from your
Yeah.
life, right? Versus family member that you may have to see next Thanksgiving or Christmas, or
At some
or
point.
right, or make excuses why you're not going to see them. And so it makes it it's a very different bond. It's a
Mhm.
very different relationship, and it can cause a very different kind of pain than a friendship that you have lost, or even a spousal relationship.
Yeah. So I guess that if my brother said we don't choose our
Yeah.
family, maybe at some level we do. But I think that's the important thing, is to really look at each person in your family and ask yourself the question, like, what did they come here to teach me?
I think that's the best question to
Right.
ask, right? Regardless of what kind of relationship you have with your family, asking yourself the question, what is it that I am supposed to learn from this relationship? What is it that I'm supposed to learn from this relationship? Because that lesson may be very different, right? And if you are in
Mhm.
conflict with one of your family, absolutely you have to ask the question, what is it that I am supposed to learn from this conflict, from this relationship? And it isn't necessarily that you have to make amends, right? Because sometimes the conflict may be justified, but there is something for you personally to learn from in going through that.
And what am I supposed to teach?
Mm,
What
that's a
do
good
I
one.
have to offer? With parents, they typically give down, and if you have a disagreement with your parent, you don't often win. But with siblings, you have a chance.
Yeah.
So with siblings, you get to learn how to, how to socialize and how to jockey for position. And those are the really interesting things. We talk a lot about parents giving us this parent-child template for relationships,
Mhm.
but our siblings give us the peer template in
Right.
relationships and can really teach us something. And if you had very argumentative or competitive siblings, you for sure are going to bring that with you into a relationship, but you will probably be more attracted to someone who will compete with you, hopefully with you, not with you. Does that make sense?
Right.
On the same team with you?
Yeah, on the same
As
team.
opposed to against you?
Yes.
With you?
Not an opponent.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
And but if it's a parent that competes with you, you're probably going to find a partner who's either very submissive
Mhm.
or very dominating.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
And
it's different.
for those that are like single, they don't have siblings, I should say.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times they might search for, other kids to be able to relate to, or even cousins
Yeah.
to be able to relate to, and so they might be seeking out that those kinds of relationships on a peer level, versus someone who grew up in a family of 9 that might be seeking more
Yeah, I think people
solitude at times.
who are single children probably lean more heavily on their friendships
Mhm.
than anything, because that's all they would have as terms of peers, and probably always feel a little bit on the outside.
Mhm.
So an only child you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Thank
Someone
you.
who would identify as an only child. They've
Yes.
never had siblings. Okay, got it. Yeah,
I
and
could always count on you, Ange, to correct my grammar. So I really
they are
appreciate
out
it.
there. And if you are an only child, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, right? About if this resonates with you concerning like cousins or someone else that maybe you're close in age to, that you were able to lean on, and besides leaning on them and trusting them, also maybe you got in more arguments and disagreements, right? And your heads butt a little bit more, the way that maybe two siblings who lived together had.
How about for you, Ange?
Oh, great. I'm glad I popped in. Okay. Was there a specific? Yes. Could you give me a little bit of guidance with a question?
So obviously you have some lifelong witnesses in your life in the form of siblings. And, what I always like to say is it's really a long game. And sometimes when there's issues, they may last a very long time because there's not really a great reason to resolve them. But then at another time you come back and life has changed, and it gives you this other space to get back to it and maybe resolve it. And then things change again, and it kind of ebbs and flows. And it is always, I think, a little bit of a it takes some energy to be around family for that reason.
Yes,
Sure
it does.
does. So I have, in my family, I have a few siblings. I have two brothers and a sister, and two of them are half siblings. So we share one parent. So there definitely is the ebbing and the flowing. One reason is because we didn't all grow up together. We would live in different households. Sometimes there were three different houses that these kids were living in separately, right? And some different people raised us. So not only were we not together, odds are we were learning different things, different ways to behave, right? And we were learning to focus on different things. And then there were times when we would come together, and the most important times were when we were all older. And that might have been the long game you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Going, let's say 20 years, and now at like 20 years old, we have more freedom and more control over our decisions. And also with that, it's not like an adult ever stopped us from seeing each other, not so much. But there was, I think, a lot of hurt and anger and different feelings concerning any adults we had in common. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because I believe that to be true for our family, that for me to talk to one of my siblings and for them to talk to me for a long while, it was difficult. And I think that's because we had someone in common, and by talking to each other, it reminded us of that hurt.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I would probably have to talk about the concept of family culture, right? And that as you grow up, there is a family culture that is created with your immediate family and maybe extended family if you're around a lot of extended family. And then just like every couple's relationship, you are challenged to grow and evolve. Families are also challenged to grow and evolve outside of the family culture that was established initially. And so as you get older, we have that regression also, right? When we get together, but then we're also challenged to evolve beyond that and to create a new relationship that is, much more healthy and has better boundaries and communication.
I think that's where the choice comes in.
The choice of wanting to evolve.
Yeah. The choice of choosing to have an adult relationship with your siblings versus as a child, you can't choose. If they live in your house with you and they're there, you have to deal with them and interact. But once you're outside of that home, you could choose to walk away and not have relationships with them. Mm-hmm. And if you do have a relationship with them, it may be out of obligation at certain points, but at another level, it's really a choosing.
I think that's true. I mean, like, for example, with Dan passing, your brother, there's a choice for the family. The choice is either go down this path of, becoming even more distant and even, more isolative, or it's moving towards joining together and bonding together even more, and so that's some of that choice that you're talking about there. Yeah.
Thank you. So we do have, we always appreciate the comments. So Brianna said she's an only child with very young cousins, and she relies heavily on her friends.
Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
Hey, Brianna. How are you doing?
Life in Florida. And, talk about family, right? Because that's an important thing for us. At our company is that we want the people who work for us to feel like they can come to us like family. And Brianna's one of our own.
Yeah, one of the Lighthouse families. So nice to see you.
Good to see. Well, we can read you. We can read you.
Nice to read your comment. Well, yes, that's it's a really good comment that you have there, because like our youngest, he is 15 years apart from
10.
10 years. I'm not good with math. 10 years apart. from his older brother. And so, for him, a lot of times it kind of felt like being an only child.
For both of them.
Yeah. And so they did rely a lot on their cousins and then also friends too. Yeah.
And I think that is, it's really difficult. And I think that's where we come up with the word hood, like brotherhood, right? A brotherhood is not a brother that's blood or a sisterhood. And I think we use those words to try to describe a bond that we form over something else. And I remember reading this article about human beings can form a bond over something other than blood, like a flag, like your sports team, or
Go Bears,
or your country, or whoever you're going to fight for or fight with or whatever. And so we have this ability to invest in those other relationships and pull people in. And I think really that is why we have community, or we're supposed to. It takes a village, because it's another perspective that offers another layer of safety and protection for a human being in a culture, to have people with other outside skills and resources that are also supportive. In the hood part, brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever, neighborhood is like, can I count on you?
In the hood.
Can I count on you? Will you be there if I need you? And when we lived much more stationary, structured lives, we had more of that. And people are much more transient. Like Brianna moved to Florida, so we don't see her every day anymore. And but there's still that memory of, you being pregnant and having your son and all you went through with that. And then, talk about like, that's the snapshot, and you moved away. And when we see you again, it's gonna be like, oh, look at your kids, how big they are, and that kind of stuff. But that bond is still there.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm just kind of reminiscing now of all this, all the past, and I wish I can get this fourth camera thing here going, because I wanted to show you something that was really cool. And it's not working in technical difficulties. Sorry. But I was just going to show
you can put the camera on me and you can try to figure it out.
Family, pictures for Jean and her family. She grew up with 9. I grew up with 2 sisters. I was the oldest. And, for me, a lot of the family time was spent with extended family. So my dad had 4 brothers and a sister, and their families were brought over from Iran by him, and we all lived in the same neighborhood. And so, when we had, holidays or family events, everyone got together, and I spent a lot of time with cousins, and so that was like the family culture that I grew up in. And, when we got a little bit older, everyone moved to different states. And so we've been very separated for a very long time. And so for my sisters and their kids and, our family, our immediate family, and my parents, we have really kind of solidified, this family culture. And I think he evolved pretty well over time. Even though, we have different views, we have different perspectives on life and everything, very much like Carrie was talking about, even though we grew up in the same kind of environment, we have different perspectives on everything that we encounter in this world.
I think that's interesting, because for some reason, and I'd like to hear from other people if you're having the same experience, within the past month, we saw a sibling of yours.
Ange, thank you. Yay.
That's my family. When there were 7 of us, my mom has had 7 kids before the age of 30. So she's probably about 32 there, because my youngest brother looks like he's 1 or 2. And then she had 2 more after that. But like your sister, who we haven't seen in 20 years, came over to your parents' house. Your cousins.
My cousin,
not
my sister, yeah.
And, you have some other family coming. We're gathering, this weekend. And that's kind of how, like, you can always, at any moment, pick up the phone, and that person's not going to be like, who? I don't remember you. Who were you again?
Yeah.
And that's those kind of bonds that we form that give us all these opportunities to not just the practice, but like, how do you forgive? How do you get over those type of wounds? We always say that in a primary relationship,
Mhm.
your partner's the one who's going to hurt you the most and heal you the most.
Yep.
And I would say the second category of that is your siblings.
I think family
Mhm.
in general.
Yeah,
You know,
family in
we
general.
always, and we're talking about couples and couples relationships. We say that it is the most challenging and most rewarding experience you will ever have. You know, of all relationships,
Mhm.
right? But when it comes to family relationships, they are challenging themselves. I mean, it is
Mhm.
very different, that kind of bond, and the challenges that come with that are very different as well.
So just check out real quick what Tina said, and we love when Tina joins us.
Hey, Tina. One
She
of my
said, one of my sisters is only 3 years younger than me. We remember things so different. It's like we lived in two different houses, even though we went
Yeah.
through the same things together.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
And those are difficult perspectives because you really want, especially as an adult, because our memories are only about 50% accurate.
Yep.
Isn't that pretty scary?
Yep.
And it's supposed to be that way because we all are supposed to have our own takeaways, our own things that we get out of that. And I think as an adult, you hope for that validation.
Mm-hmm.
You hope you go back to your sibling, you're like, remember that?
And they're
And
like,
they're
no,
like,
I don't remember that.
That's how I saw
Yeah.
it.
But I remember when you did this thing. You're like, what? I don't remember that. Yeah. Yeah. And, because you have different ages, so
Mhm.
you're going to have different perspectives. Oh, Joel. Hey, Joel.
You want to read it?
My sister and I bonded over the fact that we are not perfect. Well, that's a good thing to bond over. I always thought she was. She always thought I was unstoppable.
Those are fun perspectives to get.
Yeah.
What other people think about you and whatever. I was going to say, like, we probably project the most onto our siblings than any other people in the world.
You were mentioning the recording that Angie did for me for my
Mhm.
birthday, right? It was last year.
Yeah.
Last year's birthday, she made this recording and she contacted like all of my family and had them do a little sound bite about who they thought I was. And it was really interesting to hear all of their perspectives on how they saw me and my, strengths and sometimes my limitations and, and it was really cool to hear that. And that's the thing is our siblings, our family members are going to have different perspectives of us that we are never going to have.
Mhm.
And so they do serve as those witnesses for us.
I think the biggest thing that they do in the end is they show you what's really important. In the end, all of the little things or even some of the big things, because this is someone you're going to see from either your birth or their birth until their death or your death. And at that moment, that is when everything else falls away. Everything else falls away to the word that we call each other, whether it is son or daughter, mother, father, brother, sister, or friend.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing else matters. You never walk through a cemetery and see this person worked 80-hour weeks.
Was the best accountant I've ever
and
had.
made millions of dollars and, climbed the Sears Tower or whatever. All
that
of
would be
those
impressive, actually.
accomplishments fall away. And all that's left is our relationships with other people.
That is exactly the most important thing. And, in the last couple of weeks, it really shined a light on that about how important, family and specifically our relationships are.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember looking around the room at all family and said, these are the people that could potentially bury you. I mean, like, if you pass.
Probably not potentially.
Well, they probably are, right? And so it's these relationships that we build, that in the end really matter the most.
You know, one thing I want to say, and this is to everyone, this is not about family, but when someone passes, it's such a great, big, painful thing that a lot of people are afraid of it. And I remember having to walk into my brother's son's home the day we found out my brother passed. And I just remember not wanting to walk into that house and not wanting to share with him his pain. And, you know, we encouraged our son, who's his cousin, one of our sons too, you know, why don't you give him a call? And I don't think as cousins, they probably have ever talked on the phone.
Mm-mm.
And he's like, well, what would I say? And I said, it doesn't matter. And if you ever have to err on the side of showing up and say nothing, just be, because that's all that matters. Nobody remembers anything you said anyways, and the words don't matter. But what matters is the showing up and the hug and just being there. And so if you ever find yourself questioning that, go. Do not let anything else become more important than that moment and showing up. And that, I think if you can take that opportunity through your entire life and show up, just go. And it's going to be awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable. And that's how all relationships are. Everyone has that. Nobody has a family where they just fall into a wonderful place and feel great.
No.
Maybe some people sometimes,
No,
but
I don't
for the
think so.
most part,
That doesn't exist.
I know more people that don't than
No.
do. It's really normal in families. People don't talk.
It takes
all
work.
sorts of stuff.
It takes
Yeah.
work. Just like couple relationships, it takes so much work. And just like Carrie says, just show up. So true. You know, it takes work to have, you know, a connecting bond with anyone.
Mhm. Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is, you know, let alone our family. It takes investment. And I just want to thank everyone out there who did show up. Those of you who showed up for the wake, or those of you who sent flowers, those of you who, you know, made a wonderful text, or, you know, came to the funeral. We really, really appreciate, you know, all the support. I appreciate all the support you guys gave Jean and her family. And so thank you so much for showing up, Yes.
It's each of those little showing ups are little hits of that dopamine and oxytocin that makes you feel better. It just does something, and it doesn't matter what people say.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter at all what people say. In fact, some people should not talk. There were some people I didn't really know. There were more people that were friends of people that they try, and you know, that's fine. But it is that just being. And I don't know anyone on this planet who doesn't want that, who doesn't want to feel connected, to feel a part of something, to feel like they matter. And if it's so weird and awkward, it's even better. Mm-hmm. There was someone that came to the funeral. I think Shelly knows us. She doesn't know the rest of the family. And
yeah.
I was walking out to, I think, get a bite to eat or something out of the line. You know, we were all in the line, and I saw her, and it felt like just a little glimpse of normal from going back into this childhood stuff. And it was just so welcoming to see, and very warming to my heart. And that's all. I said hi to her. I said, I'll be right back. So I was going to run to get somebody and come like for 2 minutes. And she left. And I don't blame her. She probably had no one to talk to. And she didn't know anyone else there. Mm-hmm. And it still is really impactful. And you just never know. And sometimes it's the people out of nowhere that show up. That is awesome.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. I think I fixed something here.
Oh.
Yeah, I did. Here we go.
Okay, so that is the whole family. I'm 18 here. This is right before I left for the Army. And my youngest sibling, Sarah, is about 18 months old, like the older one who is right in the middle now. Yeah, that's them. And that is us with siblings and children.
Yeah. Siblings and children. Yeah.
The ones who are there. I don't know if everyone's there, but most of them are there.
And that's my family there. That's all my siblings and their family as well. And you might even be able to see Angie in the middle there by the tree.
Right in the middle.
Yeah. And that's our immediate there. And this is the whole, like, well, I was going to
Not
say the
whole, but-
Holzender clan, but
There's a group of us that gather and go camping once a year, and that's how we stay in touch with my dad's extended family.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it's quite a group. It's quite a group. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone wishes someone else would pick up the phone and invite you. And if we're all wishing that, someone actually has to do it. And if there's someone that you're kind of thinking about right now, someone in your heart that maybe you haven't talked to, or you feel like too much time has passed, no such thing. Do it. Do it.
Yeah. You know, it's a lot easier to have. Thank you, Tina. Thank you. Love showing slideshows. So yeah, you know, it is a lot easier to fill in the gap, the distance that is growing between you and whoever your family is. It's easier to fill that in with resentment. It's easier to fill it in with guardedness. And I think naturally that's kind of what happens for all of us, you know, is that when that distance grows between us and our spouse, or between us and our sibling, between us and our uncle or aunt, then we start to kind of make something up in here, you know, that maybe that person doesn't like us, or maybe, you know, they're
like
angry with us, or I don't like them, or they offended me because they said this or did this. It's very easy for that to happen. And as I said, it's very natural for that to happen because our brain works that way. Our brain is always looking for the negativity in our environments, scanning it naturally, looking for threats. And if there is any type of ambiguity, our brain is going to turn it into a threat. And so that is why, you know, when we talk about investing in our relationships, when we talk about nurturing it, that it is a constant, it's a full-time job. Our relationships with our family members is also something that needs nurture, it needs investment. And if we are not investing in it, it is going to naturally degrade over time.
But those relationships don't die.
Your
stay
role,
alive.
yes, your status, your
They
role,
just
your
stay painful.
title,
Yeah,
is not going to die, right?
And whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 5 minutes, whenever, you know, however far apart we come, whenever you do another touch point, then it starts over again, and starts over again, and starts over again. And those touch points are really, really, really important. And sometimes painful to reach out, painful to whatever, but what's stuck in our heart, I promise, is more painful. Whatever is not said. So might be time for some meditation.
Yeah, looks like it is.
Yeah.
All right.
So
For those of you joining us for the first time, Carrie, we do meditation at the end. And so Jean's going to lead us in some meditation tonight.
yeah. So, you know, get into a position where your spine is straight and focus on your breath, and just allow your eyes to kind of look downward. You don't have to close your eyes. Just look downward. And be aware of the rhythm of your breath. And then softly close your eyes. And try to sense your heartbeat. And know that way back, there was a time when the most loudest and constant sound was your mother's heartbeat. And there was a time you took your first breath. And now I want you to imagine that you're at the moment in your life that is 5 minutes before you take your last breath. And if you had a choice, would you be alone or with others? If you're with others, who would that be with? Imagine what you would say, what they would say to you. Imagine if you were alone, what thoughts would go through your mind. And now imagine that you don't have a choice, and that the person that's going to be there with you in that moment may be a stranger, or someone you don't like, or someone who doesn't like you. What would you say? What would be important in that moment? What would you want to hear? And imagine if you could choose one person that you would want to be present at the moment of their death. Who would that be? Why would you want to be there? What would you say? What would you hear? And what's the first thing you would do after they passed? What would happen in the next hour? These are sacred moments to allow ourselves to have true perspective. To let go of the things that seem so important, but really aren't. What we look like, how impressive we might be, what a disappointment we might be. All of that fades away. Each and every time you choose to have a heart-to-heart connection, which is all that matters in the end. And take a moment to search your heart. For someone you would like to forgive you, or someone who you need to forgive. And choose to let go and accept forgiveness. Or offer forgiveness. beautiful part about being human is we can choose. And offer a short prayer of love and forgiveness for anyone in your life who's going through a difficult time. And feel the lightness inside of you as you offer that. And bring your awareness back to your breath. And gently, just a little bit, still looking down, open your eyes. And feel what's different from when we started this meditation a few moments ago. And take a deep breath. And be fully present in your body and aware. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes, and just have to say that today's, live webinar has actually been done in remembrance of Jean's brother, Dan. I just want to say again, thank you all for all the comforting words and support and that all of you gave us. So, and
I hope he's at peace, and I hope we're all at peace one day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so until next time, everyone, synergize your life and synergize your love.